today we really need to talk about going beyond. Do DACs make a difference? And I mean, we're talking beyond in terms of price, performance. You know, we've got a decent number of customers at the higher end of things, and including ourselves, who are, are just accustomed to having really nice gear, and they don't have a problem spending the big bucks to get it, whatever it takes. And a lot of them do roll through different brands and different amps, different DACs to find the combination that fits them. And, that's the beauty of having disposable income.
Well,
you can get away with that.
It seems like there's a group of people in the high end, and they all are chasing the same thing, and they all get on bandwagons all at the same time. That this is the new hotness. This is the new hotness.
The proverbial last 1%
yeah.
of performance.
Yeah.
Then they don't always like it.
Not always.
They get the new thing and they don't like it. They don't like it. They
Right.
go back to the other thing or move on to the next thing.
It seems like usually initially they like it, and then after a week or two goes by, they're like, "Yeah, I sold it."
Sometimes people just get bored real easy too.
That's true.
But yeah, and of course, there's always that chasing the latest and greatest thing too that we see a lot. But at this level, like the Rockna we got here, was it $26,500?
$26,500.
$26,500.
Rockna Wavedream.
Yeah.
Signature reference.
When you look at this level, when you get above 20K or so, and I mean literally, you can go to $300,000 for a DAC system, and we're talking probably 5-6 pieces. It's a rack full of gear just to take a digital signal, convert it to analog, right? So this is the range though that's available at the upper and the nosebleed levels. And, companies like DCS they just came out with a new one. I think it's almost $300,000 for that huge system.
The Verise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole stack.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you're obviously it's a different level of consumer at that point. In fact, I haven't talked to anyone who's using it for headphones currently. Have you? I don't think so. Yeah. I don't even know if there are any in this country yet. I'm not sure. They just started making them about a year ago. But that's the range when you get in the upper end of things. So, let's talk about that. Like, I mean, we, in doing this for a while, we're fortunate enough being at this level of headphone to have these companies let us play with this stuff. Mm-hmm. And Norm knows, at the shows too, there's other companies that there's many vendors who get a hold of some of these pieces of gear like we do to play with.
This came through Verdant Audio, who's one of our dealers. So he sells our headphones, and he has this. He's a dealer for Rockna and has it on demo and lent it to us for SoCal. So if you came and visited us in SoCal, you got to hear this with a WA33. Mm-hmm. So, the proof was in the listening at that point.
Yeah.
It was rave reviews.
Yeah. It was a WA33 Elite, so...
No, we didn't have the Elite.
Oh, you didn't have the Elite?
Woo had an Elite.
Yeah, we just had the stock second gen.
Oh, got it. Oh.
But in classic fashion, that system had someone playing the loudest you've ever heard. Like literally everybody turning around and looking. Like, it was on that.
Yeah.
So, and wow.
If I recall, you guys took a video of it. That guy was it was sitting there bebopping in the seat.
Slipknot.
Yeah.
Listening to.
Yeah. But I mean, it's kind of cool though when you think about it. I mean, you can't do that continuously because you'll go freaking deaf. But what? He's obviously to him, it was probably damn near reproducing a concert event. Or
it was that level.
Just throwing him back in time, and that's really what all the years I've been doing this in 2-channel and high end. I mean, really, it's mainly a man sport. I mean, it's mostly guys that deal with the 2-channel end of it. But that's what I think we're after. They're trying to reproduce a live event, whether it be with speakers or a headphone. And, and it gets to you get this in your brain. You get a sound in your brain, just like we're accustomed to listening to nice gear. And when you go down a few notches, it's quite noticeable. And same when you go up and you hear something that you've never heard before, it's like, wow, that's really nice. And, the cool thing is being able to, first of all, get to a level where you can recognize that. You need to get beyond a certain price point.
Like we'll have stuff like this in here, and at home it takes me weeks sometimes to get reused to my the stuff I have at home.
Yeah.
You get absorbed in this sound, and it's tough.
Well, that's
tough to forget it.
That is the bigger thing. It's always going back. Like, because like you may not be wowed initially in something really high end or anything, and maybe like, yeah, this is fine, and then you play it for a few weeks, and then you go back to what you normally had, and you're like, oh, I missed that now.
Wah, wah.
Yeah. And then weeks or sometimes months go by, and I'm like, I'm good with my thing again.
Right,
like,
right.
I don't see why I'd go any further than this. This is perfectly fine.
Right.
I need no more. And then you listen to this again, and you're like, oh, well.
I know. And, and I've heard a number of high-end decks through DACs and sources. Reel-to-reel was our favorite. It's hard to beat tape.
Yeah.
No digital to analog conversion needed.
Yeah, master
but
tapes.
in this day and age, unfortunately, it's a very rare scene to
There's a lot of problems.
being able to do that, Yeah. Well, you got to be able to afford the toys.
I mean,
$500 an album.
Yeah, that's
And they wear out.
They wear out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the more you play them, the worse it gets.
Just
It's a typical. Yeah.
Well, DACs are cool because the innovation continues.
Right.
They're not stopping.
Totally.
At all. They're pushing hard.
I guess that goes same thing for headphones and DACs. Most people, especially in the high end, they just like a new technology, a different way of doing something. It doesn't even need to be better, just different. So people like to get new gear because of that.
Last year at SoCal, we had just the reference, not the signature.
Right.
So the signature model is the new one. I believe it's $9,000 more. And their whole point was that while we were making the other one, we were like, this is the pinnacle. This is the best we could do. There were things that they could have done better, but it just cost so much more. They were like, there's no way.
Yeah, when you get into like stupid expensive caps and you start looking at if you really wanted to trick out most of the resistors and stuff that are in series with the audio and the fact that from what I'm hearing, high-end components being used in the high-end audio side are becoming scarcer and scarcer, as in the manufacturers aren't producing them or can't afford to produce it anymore.
Yeah.
They're a lot of manufacturers throughout the world, right? They have to do what they got to do to maintain business.
It's just not the volume.
Yeah, they just don't have it.
Just
they have high volume in different places, so they're focusing on those.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no volume in the high end parts. If these guys
transistors.
sell 20 of these a year, I'd be amazed, right? And so where do you get 20 of a certain kind of capacitor? And that's all you need for a year. That's not production. So I get where the actual manufacturers of these high-end components are saying, hey, we can't afford to do this anymore.
I mean, one of the only places that I've seen for like particularly surface mount, high-end, like made for audio stuff, is Sony. Sony did it in the Walkman.
Yeah.
And they're big enough where they can,
right.
actually.
Well, and they're Japanese too.
Yeah, right.
So they probably got some people that have been around a long time, designers, right? That are old school that, they can touch a part and tell you what it sounds like. Literally, you go look at something and go, you get really good at it, and you start to understand that it's like cooking. You start to understand how these high-end ingredients go together to form a cohesive sound or part or an amplifier stage or whatever. And that's really what you're getting in the high end of things, is you're getting guys designers and engineers that just understand, down to a component level, what each thing's doing. And where, it's not just a simple circuit design. It's okay, we need this value resistor. No, we need this value resistor with this level of noise floor and this temperature coefficient. And they're considering every possible angle that could affect the conversion process.
I see a lot of talk about keeping the traces between components internal to minimal or liking or similar values. So like the clock is in a certain place because they can make the wire that length the same, all 8 wires running into it or whatever, while also being away from the power so that it's isolated and
just
insulated.
Juggling.
And it's like, but if the wire's too long, then it negatively affects it. So it's like, even just something like the placement of the clock on the board is arduously poured into.
Well, and then you got companies that make external clocks for the same reason, which, it initially they're thinking, well, why would you want a clock that has to have a cable to connect to it? And seems very complicated when you could build a clock in, but, and you can, but, you'd basically, they're isolating the whole thing, the power supplies, everything just for the clock. And there's pluses and minuses to all this.
Having the clock internal on this device makes it less expensive because they'd have to have a whole second chassis with power supply and everything. But dramatically increase the complication.
Right.
So it's like that, and that's just one component. And in a DAC, like think about everything it takes to go from a digital to analog signal. Because like technically, this is also an amplifier. It's putting out analog, and it has to do it in such a perfectly clean way, because then they're going to take that and amplify it again. It's like,
well, the analog stages in these things are just as critical as the DA conversion, and that's what you see when you get in the upper end of things. You're really seeing a hell of a lot of skill sets coming together, where these guys are just accustomed to designing for a particular sound quality. It's not just specs. It's not just it's low distortion. Great. I mean, nowadays that's easy. That's like baby shit. That's like standard operating procedure. If I want to go back to a statement from Lost in Space movie.
there's already neutral, transparent DACs that are at a sample rate too high for us to hear. Right. That in general that already exists. Right. So it's like the development is building on that to bring whatever it is they think. Like in this one. Also, the networking and the network streaming was a huge point for their engineering. And whatever they did by placing the networking equipment on the board to remove parts of the system that were causing noise issues and stuff like that. I think it has like Qobuz, Tidal, Rune, like every streaming service you could possibly imagine. Like imagine what that takes. Both at a hardware and a software level to make all that work.
It's called software.
Yeah.
Someone's got to write the software.
That's the hard part.
That's a challenging part. That tends to be a challenging part for companies that are accustomed to doing 2-channel high-end, because, digital is kind of a separate, in engineering, digital is kind of a separate skill set than analog. And you'll find that usually you'll have 2 different factions dealing with each one of them. You normally have a separate set of guys or guy dealing with the analog, and he's really good at it.
Right. And
the digital, and then you've got software.
The software's a whole different
that
thing.
adds another level of complexity to your guys in analog, in 2-channel old school, who particularly just really only did analog. And digital wasn't a forte. And then they slowly had to learn digital, add displays, do this. Even a display is functionally difficult to do because it requires firmware. Someone's got to write the firmware, and you got to basically add a mini computer in the damn thing to run a display, which adds noise. So now you're I'm just trying to make the quietest system you ever heard, and now I'm introducing, so that you can have a display, I'm introducing a noise source right in the same box, and it's a challenge, and it's a challenge to anyone who designs it, because they're like they know they're adding a noise source, and they know it's difficult to isolate from the audio. They know that, but people want a display.
Well, and then they also have to, in general, they start having to build their own DAC circuitry as well. Like, so this is, an R2R ladder DAC, but it's proprietary to them. It's their DAC design, however they've decided to do it.
Right.
And I see that a lot at the higher end. You don't see anybody using off-the-shelf Delta Sigma DAC modules in there or something like that.
Right.
Every once in a while I'll see like some really old vintage Burr Brown or something, but it's like, a special one-off.
Yeah, that's the thing. In the high end, everybody's got their own way of doing things, and they all do it differently.
Yeah, and that's the attraction. Like, if you're at this level, when you start talking $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 just to convert a digital signal to analog, you probably have an associated level of gear in the rest of the system. You've got speakers and amplification and cabling, and if you're going to drop $100,000 on a DAC, you've probably got a $500,000 system. You would almost likely. You probably got $250K in the speakers alone, and you're dealing probably another $100,000 or more in cabling, power cords. So yeah, guys at that level, I mean, it's just don't give a shit. I mean, it's just they have the money.
Well, I've noticed at the higher level, it seems like they either, from a sound perspective, they tend to only go in a couple different directions. One seems to be wanting the DAC to be completely out of the way and just generally transparent to the music, because they want their preamp and their amp or whatever to provide the sound. Or it's the opposite, in which they're building their own house sound, and they're
looking for a flavor.
And in this, it's definitely they're bringing a flavor. It's as analog as digital ever sounds, and that's their thing. But like the EMM lab stuff seems to be more about accuracy.
It's a little colder, as the word goes.
Placement and
or
stuff
cooler
like that.
sounding.
And it just, but it does it at a level that you never heard before.
Right.
So you know.
And that's true. I mean, even these adjectives we use in the typical to describe, sound in general,
Well,
the sound of componentry
yeah.
is, what would you want to call it? It depends on your point of reference.
Sure.
If you're accustomed to running $2,000 DACs, and I'm sorry I have to use price on this, but unfortunately that's the way it works in this industry. When we see, and we're no different. We can only afford what we can afford. And a lot of people tend to stay within what I'd call a comfort zone for gear. And so, you got people that, let's call it the sub $1,000 category. They're just never going to spend any more than that. I get that. It works. I hear the sound. It works. And then you get beyond that and you get in a couple $1,000 range, which is a few thousand, let's call it. And now you get smoother sound, fuller, better bass. Yeah. The whole range really comes up when you jump into that few K range. And it really opens eyes. Now that's where it becomes noticeable, and now few and far between start to take it beyond that.
Yeah. Most of the headphone stacks that are sub $1,000, in general, you got to be pretty picky to pick out a difference. They do mostly sound very similar.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And even if there is a subtle difference, you could attribute it to a lot of different stuff.
Totally,
it might not have anything to do with the stack even.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have sympathy for the hobbyists who never really get out of that range, who think like all DACs sound the same. It's like, I bet you could buy 10 DACs that are in your price range, and they probably would also.
It's the same with the low end of things. When you go to the few $100 range, it's the same thing.
I totally agree with them. It's like, and they measure great and whatever,
Right.
So it's like, but there is another level, and if you're open to trying it and spending time, hopefully you get something that really sounds different.
Yeah, I remember the biggest difference in a DAC that I've ever heard was when we were in Munich that first time, and we got that Lampezator. It was this Golden Gate or whatever.
Oh,
It
yeah.
just came out.
Yeah, that was
And we had
top of the
upgraded
line at the
tubes in it
time.
and everything.
Yeah.
That thing was scary.
Yeah, I think we got Care Audio tubes for it.
Yeah.
We were working with Care Audio at the time to have our own tubes made for Woos amps for the WA33 and stuff.
It had like a haunting, spooky sound. Things would just appear like out of nowhere, and it's like you'd be looking around. Like,
and that was in the middle of a showroom
before
floor.
The show started.
Yeah.
It was quieter,
Right.
but that thing was was the first time we were like, wow, this DAC really makes a huge difference.
Well, we wanted to show off. We were to expand on that. We were in Munich, and we wanted to do a real expensive rack full of just for headphones. Mm-hmm. And I think Orlik supplied us with a $20,000 streaming front end.
Yeah.
We had all our best JPS Labs Illuminata cabling throughout the thing. It was a €125,000 system at the time.
That was the WA33, right? Where it came out?
Yeah, it was at the top.
First
Still Point supplied a nice full-size rack for us to use. It was probably, I don't know how much the rack cost alone. Took them 3 hours to assemble on site.
Yeah, luckily they did it.
Luckily he was good at it. Yeah. Shortened the time up a bit. But still, bottom line is that, we wanted to show off while we were in the show that I think it was 2018 or 17. It was the first €125,000 headphone system, and you could kick back on a nice leather chair we had there, and you had an iPad with you, and you could control all your music right from there, and it was glorious on a pair of AB 1266s, and it was cool, but what we found with doing that, right? It was a catch-22, right? Because it's in the middle of a show,
right?
People would sit there and you couldn't get rid of them. No one wanted to leave. Once they sat in that chair and they had the entire possible ability to stream anything they wanted on Tidal or whatever we were using at the time. With that system, nobody wanted to leave. It was one chair, one person.
We only had one,
That's all we could do, And I don't blame us. It was like a catch-22, and you got hundreds of people going through the show. But that was really about the PR, right?
Yeah.
And but that's the possibilities when you get into the higher end of things. You get into that realm where this stuff makes beautiful music, and you really just got to find a good combination that works for you and what you're trying to do.
I think the tough part though is being able to hear it and see, because in general, so at this price range, I haven't found any that sound the same, not even close. Like I might not be able to tell the detailed, nuanced differences between each of them without them between each other, but it's always obvious they sound different. Well, if you're trying to buy one, you're like, I have $26,000. Which DAC do I buy? Do you just take a pick and hope that it's the one you like.
Well, you
'Cause,
better,
like,
you really should be able to audition
You
at
need
this
to
price
you need to
point.
start flying places.
Hopefully.
and trying
You know,
stuff.
Yeah.
your best bet's a local dealer.
Yeah,
A lot of them will let you take this stuff home at this level. I mean, especially if you're a regular customer, it's kind of a norm. But yeah, you might want to get with someone local that sells this one a level of stuff and really try it out. And I mean, hell, if you have to, if you're spending this much money, fly somewhere, right? Even if you don't have a local dealer, go somewhere. Find a dealer you can work with that does carry this level of product. Because really, I mean, we're talking spending. It's not going to end here.
Well,
Right. If you're at the 30 to 50K, you start to get a 30, 40, 50 grand DAC range, and that's something you seriously can afford, think about. It's not going to end there. So you really need to connect with a retailer.
Well, you have the other issue of synergy then.
Right.
So it's got to go with your amp,
Right.
or you've got to buy an amp that goes with it.
Yeah.
And
Or the
it's like,
dealer's got to carry that amp, and you could try it there, or
hopefully,
you know, or they'll ship it to you. A lot of at this level, if you have a relationship with vendors, they usually will. That's what these people do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't
Yeah.
Verdant send us out to potential clients? I don't know.
I believe so. Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Yeah,
anyway,
when he has demo units,
right.
yeah.
I think it's challenging for any dealer to have a lot of $26,000 demo units.
Right, yeah, you don't just
of
have those
anything.
on deck.
Well, and the biggest problem is how many times do you want to ship a $26,000 piece
it's a little
around the
scary,
country and
yeah.
back? So but bottom line is that but yeah, you're right. I mean, this is the best you've heard, and I'll be honest with you. I could go back about 15 years, and I've heard this sound already on a nice DAC. Remember the light harmonic?
Oh yeah.
It was basically a square shape that they turned on its axis, so it looked like a diamond shape.
Yeah, yeah.
Giant DAC. I think it was even a little bigger than this. Might have been
It's
about
like
the
thicker.
same. Yeah, and it was at the time it was $30,000, which was 15 years ago was like a chunk of change.
Mm-hmm.
And but again, similar character to this. I remember its sound, and yeah, it was a cool design, and they were again sticklers. They had the power supply isolated in all aluminum machine chassis milled out just for supply, separate down below, versus a secondary chassis up above.
I think these days, though, DAC manufacturers have a new challenge with headphones. I really do. They don't have the room is so small.
Well, yeah.
With headphones,
It's
and
way
I
more
think that's
particular.
part of the reason why the current innovation is so strong, is because they have to get better. The headphones are very resolving in this much space, an inch from your ears.
Well, it's not only that, but the cart before the horse is that they needed headphones like what we produce in order to hear their gear to that level.
Mm-hmm.
Really. Because, using this in a typical 2-channel in a room with speakers and crossovers and the complexity of it all, you're not really picking out your component because you got a lot it's going through to get your ears, and the room's mucking it up. And where a headphone is almost like a direct connection from your brain to the damn gear. It's as close as you can get the direct connection, and you still hear something.
Well, that is true.
Without plugging a wire in it can directly into your brain.
That's the thing I noticed when listening to this at the show with the 33, is normally you're like, am I listening to what this DAC sounds like? That's usually what you're thinking.
Right.
But when I was listening to this with a 33, I'm like, I forgot there was a DAC.
Yeah.
Right. It's like we're just listening to music now.
Yeah. This approach is analog tape.
Right. It sounds
this
very
level,
natural.
and we keep pointing at this because it's sitting in front of us.
Right.
But that's what this level does. And, the reality of it is, too, when you get to this level, there's a lot of, like every level, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also the subtle differences, that 1% that each individual is looking for something different, depending on what you like to listen to,
Well, unlike the headphone amplifiers, have already been a lot of DACs in the world for quite a while, because that's a direct pull out of 2-channel, right? And it's like, my point is that any $30,000 DAC is not going to sound great in a headphone chain. In fact, there's probably more $30,000 DACs that will not sound good in a headphone chain than there are that do, simply because it's been going for so long.
Yeah.
That's why I was so excited about the Valencia that we talked about in the last video, is because that now the idea of a preamp. It's like, well, think about all the preamps that are out.
Right.
How good they are. Like, we can now introduce those to a headphone chain successfully.
Yeah, where typically it would be a It would be.
It's just like
it would go the other
afterthought.
way. It would go
It's
the
just-
wrong
yeah.
way. The preamp would introduce too much of its own sound when it's
Or
meshed
that,
up with
yeah.
the amp.
Right.
You know, and in part that might be because the amp's really integrated and it's got a volume control and it's got circuitry to deal with. You
Yeah,
know
you're like,
that.
we already have a volume control. Why we add another one?
Yeah,
I do think the community is going to be a bigger help to a customer in this price range.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are a lot of headphone guys who are going through a lot of expensive DACs trying to find it, and they're generally just cutting things out pretty quickly because it's obvious to them in the first listen, like, oh, well, you know, let's see how this is with my speakers. Okay, well, it sounds great in my 2-channel setup, but I would never use this with a headphone. So, you know, in that way, the community can be a pretty big help.
Well, and the reality too is that when you get to this, when we're talking about this level of DAC, there might only be there's less than a dozen companies, really, at that level. You know, you're not dealing. It's not like the ability to try 3 or 4 of them is insurmountable. You know, at least to triangulate on what your sound is, because you will find that whatever you're looking for, they are dramatically different at this level. They really are. You know, they all sound so good, right? But the question is, what, like you said, what goes with the rest of your system, the headphone, the speakers, whatever you're using, in your taste. The thing is, when you get to this level, your tastes are usually uber picky. You've already narrowed down what your tastes are, right? You know what a good
Right.
steak is. You
Yeah.
don't try to fool me with shit. It ain't gonna work. You know what a good bottle of wine tastes like, and you know what a good DAC sounds like, and you know. So that's it. Now you're splitting hairs. You're just looking at, you know, you've been there already. You've got it, but I want it even better, and that's tough. I mean, that's tough. You're really, you know, you're looking at the people at that level are looking at very fine changes, but to them, it's dramatic.
Yeah,
Because-
it's almost unlistenable without it.
Yep, because they've already honed in on, they've excluded in their brains. They've already excluded what they don't want to hear, and that's a shitload of stuff. If you get to this level, everything below it's already been excluded.
There is one
know?
level beyond that.
That's
and
crazy.
and that's the people that can't listen to anything digital. The vinyl only people. You know that
Yeah,
you play a CD, it's like, oh my god, I can't.
yeah.
So that's like
They
that's
could be
like,
fanatical,
That's like,
you know?
So far, we don't have too many like that in
no,
headphones.
no, it's not common in headphones.
Almost everybody in headphones has a turntable as an add-on.
Right.
to
I
their
kind of
system.
wish we did, because those guys have a finely tuned source.
Oh, yeah, that's
I
the
wish
thing.
we had more of that.
Yeah.
We would use it more at the shows if it wasn't so damn difficult
Yeah.
to do at a trade
Yeah.
show. Turntables are
Yeah.
just
I
difficult
mean,
to
if
do
a
for
turntable
headphones.
manufacturer would like to show up and set up their turntable at New York, I'll leave a space.
I
in the
tried to
corner
have
for
that
you.
2 New Yorks ago, and the guy bailed on us last
Oh, yeah,
minute.
right.
He was supposed to come with the turntable.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I will let someone else do that setup.
Yeah, right. It was, we had at one show, Denver, we had a turntable one time.
Yeah.
But yeah, the guy that made it set it up. That was the right choice. That sounded great.
I would say about half the shows I used to do shows with me going
Yeah.
back 15 plus years, but the CESs and stuff we used to do,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
almost every room, 2-channel, they almost all had turntables.
Yeah.
You know? And then it kind of faded away for a while as digital came along and everyone had to have the latest, greatest DAC.
Mhm.
And now you see a resurgence now, turntable, big time now, the
Well,
last
yeah.
so many years. Turntables have become a huge comeback the last 10 years. Around the same time the headphones started ramping up. And tape, now you see analog tape at the 2-channel shows more and more. People are bringing really nice reel-to-reels. Because it's the finest sources you can buy.
Well, at Can Jam though, like it's practically inexcusable if they can't select their own music.
Yeah.
Everyone has zero tolerance.
Well, that's the
for
biggest
that.
problem.
Right.
Is like, well, I don't even want to change the record because you know it's like it's playing. You just
Yeah, but
listen to this.
When you have a master tape
You know.
from Warner Brothers
Well, yeah.
of Led Zeppelin 2,
yeah. Well, people
It's-
liked it.
it's
But
not so bad to just play the whole tape through.
Well, yeah. So
know?
that's an exception for sure. But like, yeah, imagine if you walked into our room and we just had one
And that's
listening
all you
station.
had,
It was a
yeah.
1266, and it was the record, and
Right.
we're not changing.
Okay,
it.
that would suck. Yeah, that would
That's
suck.
what, that's what old shows used to be like.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But hey, you know, sometimes it just is what it
Oh man,
is.
how much Fleetwood Mac was playing at those old CSs?
yeah.
Oh, man.
You guys get sick of Dreamers?
Could be worse.
Yeah. Hotel California.
Yeah, Hotel California. Yeah.
It still
you-
comes up,
You
though.
couldn't walk down a hall with every room almost overlapping with Hotel California
Pretty much.
with 150 rooms playing
Yeah.
in the in a typical 2-channel show.
After years and years and years of that, it got to a point where it was like you'd ask someone, "Oh, what do you want to listen to?" And they'd be like, "Anything that's not Hotel
Yeah,
California."
it was a
That
joke.
actually came up.
Yeah.
Well, to the hobbyists who are turntable analog only, I have to say, I think it's getting pretty close.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty close with a lossless track on any of the lossless streaming services playing through this with a really natural sounding amp. I think you're almost there.
The thing is, though, turntables, it's like, yeah, it's analog, but it's got the same problems.
Mm.
Well, more problems.
It's got different problems, but
Different
the same,
problems.
Yeah, but it adds up to be the same.
You got phono
Yeah.
stages, same problems as DACs, right? They
Right.
all sound different.
Right.
Then you got styluses, setup, there's way more problems. But yeah,
It's very
if you
difficult
get
to-
it right, it's really
Yeah,
good.
I mean, like
but-
you and I were just talking this morning. Like, it's not that hard for the cabling on your turntable to turn into an antenna.
right, it's a
Like,
problem.
You can mess it up.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
we've had people playing with tinfoil and
Oh, yeah.
shit. They literally, I mean, you get an apartment in New York City somewhere, and they just you just look at it the wrong way, and you're picking up some radio station random noise somewhere, and it's a huge problem in a busy city in particular because of the proliferation of RF noise. I mean, the spectrum's just full. I mean, it's kind of like, the easiest way to describe that is remember back in the day, you'd go in your car and you'd have your cell phone and you heard this noise coming through your stereo.
Yeah.
Well, at the time, the car designers, the guys that designed the electronics in the car, they had just massive antennas in the car, and they didn't realize what cellular was going to do until all these phones started showing up, and it's just a low power noise source.
Right.
You're
Doesn't
talking
take much.
you're talking 100 milliwatts or something. You start going where you start transmitting 10, 50, 100,000 watts of power to that gets into some shit locally nearby. So, you could see where that kind of stuff. It's kind of like it's one of these things where now we got to re-engineer the wheel because our cars never had a problem like that. Now everyone is walking around with a portable noise source, and it got to laugh because today you were just dealing with a customer on, was chatting with you in the website. He was saying that he's sick of using his phone as a source because I guess he must have just got started with this whole thing. With
In general,
headphones.
yeah, he's starting to ramp up, and he was using his phone as a source, but he's sitting in his computer because he can't use his computer because it injects too much.
It's too noisy. The
Yeah,
PC.
they can be.
Yeah, and I have that issue too. And, I heard about galvanic isolators and silencers and all this stuff, and I'm like, I just assumed it was all snake oil until I bought a galvanic isolator, and it fixed it.
With some people, it solves problems. With other people, they still have a problem.
Yeah.
I've seen it go both ways, but something to try.
Right.
But the reality of it is, at this level, these are Band-Aids that we're using to really
Yeah.
cover up the real issue of the noise sources.
Yeah, like with a computer, even if you built a brand new one today with premium components and it doesn't make a sound
Right.
when you first assemble it, 1 week later it might.
Yeah, there's no telling.
Yeah, and then it's just going to make it for the rest of the time.
No
So it's-
telling.
Yeah, there's no way to make a computer not be noisy if it
Right.
is. So
Yeah, which is why we have devices like this.
Yeah, I mean, similar yet different.
You're avoiding the computer
We
if you can.
we ran into the same problem again as you were saying with phones and cars. Now with EVs, they don't have AM radios because of it.
Oh, yeah.
They
I
make
was trying
too
to
much-
tune
too
in
much
for the
noise.
football game for some reason. I'm like, I went to in the Tesla, and it's like, it doesn't have AM. It just has, it'll stream
it.
freaking anything.
Yeah, you have to stream
It
it.
has all the local FM stations. 'Cause, they're usually streaming, right?
Right.
But it can't pick up a damn AM. I don't know if the AM radio
Well,
stations stream.
WGR, they're
Is GR?
online.
Are they?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it
can
is.
get it.
Yeah,
It's
you
it's
can
in
see
the car. You can you can
So I
play
just
it.
got to figure out where to look for it.
Yeah, you could stream it, but they literally do not even have an AM radio
Yeah.
because
Right.
you just pick up all the noise from the drivetrain.
Well, not to mention AM radio stations are kind of
Well, they're dying too.
petering out.
Yeah,
It's called a high electric bill.
yeah.
AM in general, AM radio stations require a ton of power so do FM radio stations,
Well,
but they
sure.
require a ton of power for the relatively poor sound quality you get out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it really doesn't compare
Yeah.
to.
It'll be here for a while. It's the backup for emergencies.
Totally.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it has to exist.
They're still around.
Right.
But neither here nor there. We love DACs at this level. We love sources this level. It more so shows off the capabilities of what we do in audio, and so we very much appreciate the efforts that these guys go through to make these things sound so good. And trust me, you're dealing with a lot of experience and a lot of engineering and a lot of so-called trickery You're learning all kinds of shortcuts over time to, like you said, placement of where you put the clock and where all these things are learned by trial and error over time because there's no necessarily good way to measure it out. You have to physically hear the problem and then engineer it out. And it's tough. It's tough to do. You've got to hear it first.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now. We're getting to a point where the resolution on the playback side of the speakers are no different. The speakers, the distortion levels at speakers have dropped dramatically. I've got B&W 802s. I think they're 0.1%, like full range.
Mm-hmm. You
never had that in a speaker. You were good with a few percent distortion. So you think about the driver tech and their ability to just filter this stuff, or the ability to redesign the woofer, the tweeter, the bass drivers, everything throughout, the crossover components, to be able to get it to be such a cohesive low distortion transducer at full range. And, headphones are like that too. We're at a point now where distortion's no longer an issue. Everything else is more distorted, for Christ's sakes, including the music, and they do it on purpose, and that's fine. That's they want to sound. But the point is that's not a factor.
It's not an issue for us in headphones.
True.
Others may still be struggling.
Well, that's true.
And we'll pour one out for them.
Yeah.
As we engineer our next headphone.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We've gone beyond that.
But yes, our distortion is very low.
Yeah. But bottom line is that, this is the level we're at with this playback. And we're at our level of headphone and transducers, we're very capable of showing you the most subtlest change in an electronics design, to a point where a lot of manufacturers use our headphones for a reference.
Mm-hmm.
Electronics manufacturers, they hear it and they're like, oh, now we hear the problem, we can solve it. And that's what high end is that they systematically have eliminated faults throughout the chain of components within a box. And in us as consumers or as users, the idea to get to a near perfect playback system is to eliminate faults within the signal chain as much as possible. So you're committed to what this black box can do, and in another black box is an amplifier, and in the cabling and the speakers. You can't control what's inside it, but you can certainly control your environment and control the combination of these devices. And the idea is that to reach a point in playback where you systematically remove each little fault until all that remains is the source. And once you reach that level, you can play anything. 50s, 60s, 70s, 40s, current music. It will all play well. And it's very difficult to get a system at that level. But when you hear it, you realize what you have. And that's why, devices like this and the higher end of things, the DCS stuff and, guys like EMM and Labs and these guys that make
Meitner playback designs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please, all of you, all manufacturers, continue pushing.
Totally.
Because once you find it, years from now, that'll trickle into other components. Everything will get better. Applaud them. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a passion of love at that point to make devices at this level. It really is. It's not, it's not something to ever poo-poo or disregard, because it is they are references of digital to analog conversion at the D-data level, and amplifiers with amplification and preamps. These are really reference quality, throughout the world pieces that just do such a tremendous job of playing music back, where it even the most experienced person playing music in their room who has the most beautiful system can be touched by something at these levels. Something new, something that they've never heard before. It's a very emotional experience, even for those who thought they had nothing left in them to be surprised or emotionally respond to.
Yeah, it happens.
And, that's the beauty of this level. And that's why people are willing to pay the level they do for products like that, because it is something that you just fall in love with it, and you got to have it. And, and that's cool. It's a hobby. It's awesome. So if you can afford it, great. The house is paid for. Do it.
And everyone should share with us when they do.
Yeah, totally.
Tell us what you think. If someone's heard this, I know there's only been a few in the States.
Or any high-end stuff.
Please comment and say, yeah, I heard that. I liked it. I didn't like it. I like this about it. I'd buy this instead.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, we want to know, we want to learn too.
Yeah. No, it's always good feedback to know what works with what, and also what customers' preferences are. So, thank you everyone for watching. I know we blabbed on long and hard in this one, but we had to get it out of our systems. Thank you everyone. Take care of yourselves.